When you're beginning a project like Death Stranding, what are you thinking about first? Is it, because it's a game, is it the gameplay aspects first, or are you thinking about that story?
それぞれあるんですけど、
Well, I think both
最初にストー
actually.
リーを考えたり、
But
思いついたりするっていうのは、
I kind of have sometimes think about the
それを
story first
小説にするとか映画にするとか、
and think about what to
ゲー
do,
ムにする場合は
write
ゲ
a
ームの
book.
ギミックを考えます。
And if I decide to make a game, I would think about the gimmick of the
あ
game.
るいはその、ビジュアルだけが出てきて、
Or sometimes a
あるシー
visual
ンが
pops up in my
映像が出
mind,
てきて、
like a
そこか
scene.
らストーリーを、
And then I kind of think about story then.
もう一つちょっと特徴的な
And
の
one
は、
more,
何かのその、日常の感覚みたいな。
I might kind of have it like a normal feeling, like
何か誰かから追われてて、
like someone's like chasing me and I have to hide. And I kind of think of it, and I want to make it in a game, this
この緊
tension.
張感、このドキドキ感を
And I want to kind of
生かすような世界観と
represent
ス
that.
トーリーを作る。
So I kind of then think about
それぞれ
what I put in a game
で
or a story.
Stranding の
The
場合は
approach is all totally
最
different
初
of how I come up with ideas.
ビーチに
First
キラと
Death Stranding,
が座礁してて、
I had the image
まあ
of the
裸の男がこ
beach
う横たわってる
and the dolphins
映像が
or
パッと出て
whales were stranded and a naked guy kind of was on the beach, and that was an imagery first, and that started Death Stranding.
My name is Tameem Antoniades. I'm the writer and creative director on Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. I think the first time I really thought I'd love to work in games was when I saw Tron. I saw that in the cinema and I was blown away by computer graphics, and I think you'll find that from a lot of old school developers in the industry. That Tron started it for them. So I learned to program, because the only way you could make games was to learn to program. And then I was a programmer for 5 years in the industry. And then I realized that I would never be a great programmer. I think I was probably good at best. So I sort of shifted more into design. And then that led me to the more kind of, I guess you'd say, artistic side of things.
My name is Melina Juergens and I work for Ninja Theory, and I've been their video editor, their photographer, and now also their actress. Well, I started 2012, where I was asked to do behind-the-scenes photography for Devil May Cry. And then I evolved into being the video editor as well. I've done all the DMC trailers and then moved on to doing all the Hellblade trailers and all the Death Diaries that you can see on YouTube, the behind-the-scenes. And then, they just kept asking me if I could be a stand-in for their technical experiments. And at some point the director was like, "Could you just act out this scene for us?" And I was like, "Not really. I'm not an actress and I don't know how to act." And he was like, "Just give it a try, please." And then I did it, and they were blown away and thought I had some potential to do the actual job. Yeah.
I think the future of our lives is going to be immersed in incredibly high-quality 3D graphics. For a while, we put our hopes in VR, but it turns out that the quality of the experience, basically the resolution and field of view and these other technical parameters of the thing, were just not good enough to bring in consumers and retain them. I think what you have there is the difference between the Palm Pilot and the iPhone, and it really highlighted, the VR situation highlighted that we're still in the Palm Pilot stage. And Palm Pilots were not unsuccessful, right? And VR is being used heavily in enterprise. Ford's design center, all the car designers are using VR to walk around models of their cars and tweak them before they're actually built. But it's just not good enough for consumers yet. I think it's most likely now that AR at some point is going to hit a critical mass and become the most pervasive platform before VR is. And it's not clear what the time frame is. Magic Leap and Microsoft with HoloLens 2 have some really amazing AR products, but they're still not there yet, right? They're still in the early adopter phase. They're the Palm Pilots. They're used by a lot of customers throughout industry, but they're not yet consumer platforms. And I think at some point they are going to hit a critical mass. And I have no doubt within 12 years, we are not going to be operating our lives on top of smartphones. We're going to be wearing glasses, like my goofy glasses here. When we put them on, we're going to have an 8K per eye, completely immersive computer graphics experience filling our whole field of view. And we'll seamlessly see a combination of that projected into our view with our normal view of the real world.
My name is Ashly Burch, and I'm a voice actor. Specifically, I'm the voice of Aloy in Horizon Zero Dawn. Of all the things that I do, I probably, this is a cheating answer, I guess, because I enjoy voice acting and writing equally. They sort of tickle different parts of my brain. Voice acting is much more emotional and visceral, and writing is much more analytical. Feels like problem solving, sort of like you're solving a puzzle. So they sort of feed different parts of my creativity. So it's hard to choose between them. But of the things that I do, those are my favorites, my focus.
Well, one of the things that's been so wonderful about being involved in the Witcher series is that it's actually quite rare for actors to be associated with a character for 10, 11, 12 years, whatever it was. So I went on a journey with Geralt, and I've said in various other interviews and things that he started out as unemotional, and then in Witcher 2 he was a little bit more emotional, and then in Witcher 3, by the end, you get to the end of Witcher 3 and Blood and Wine, and he's like a different character. But it kind of reflects life in a way, as we grow older, we understand more about ourselves, our world, everything else. So that's a different experience than I've had with just about anything else, It's
difficult in games, though, because you can't necessarily control, because my experience of playing Death Stranding might be very different to Nicholas's or Aki's. So how do you make sure that the players are getting the experience that you want them to have?
Well,
that's true.
映画の場合は
But in
主
movies,
人公がいて
there's a main character,
主人公の後頭部というか
and you're kind of following his behind from the head. You're kind of following him in a movie,
を疑似体験する
and you're kind of having this experience through the main character. See the drama
ゲーム
behind
の
it.
場合はやっぱり自
But
分
for
が
games,
右に行くか左に行くか
You decide whether you go right or left.
そこのやっぱり経験値というか
So you get more experience in this game because you control that. And I think that's one of the powers of the game. And I really want to kind of implement that. So it's a little different than creating a movie, even the story plot.
A question I get asked is, where did the idea for Hellblade come from? And it's hard to answer questions like that because it came left field. I was looking at psychosis because I didn't know anything about it, and sometimes you don't know anything about a subject, you just start Googling it, and I ended up on these forums where people were describing their own experiences, and I had no idea that your mind could create such vivid, sometimes really frightening experiences. And it occurred to me that a video game could represent that very well, because unlike watching a movie, you're a participant in a game. You have to be able to function in a game. And so if you're going through, if you lose touch with reality and you're hearing voices and visions and your world is unreliable, I thought you could get a really good sense of someone else's experience that is very alien to most of us. And then all the pieces just started to come together. I mean, Hellblade I think of it as a historical drama, but the fantasy elements come from Senua's mind. So that was really the spawn of the idea.
The challenges were obviously the mental health side of things. So the character suffers from voice hearing and seeing visions. And we worked closely with a neuroscientist called Dr. Professor Paul Fletcher, and then some people that have experience with seeing visions and hearing voices. So we had meetings with them, and they told me what it feels like, and I had some lectures by the professor as well. So it was really interesting to understand the human brain a bit more and learn about that. And then, playing the character was quite challenging because it's a big responsibility to portray mental health. And I have my own experiences with it as well. Like, my father had psychosis and I suffer from quite a lot of anxiety myself. So it wasn't so hard for me to connect with the character because I know it from my own life. But yeah, it was just a big responsibility on my shoulders to get it right, because you don't want to upset anyone that has told you their personal stories,
I think the thing that's so interesting and sort of inspiring about Aloy is that, so she is the sole protagonist of an open world game, which is not something that you see often. Oftentimes when you're playing a game, you get to choose genders. You can either be the male version of the protagonist or the female, or if you have a single option, it's usually just a male protagonist. So it's pretty rare that there's a game where you get one option and it's a lady, and it happened to be me in this particular instance. So that alone was both extremely exciting and also a little harrowing, because I wanted to make sure I did a good job. But I think the beautiful thing about Aloy is that she, and we were very conscious of this, especially when we were finding the voice and we were creating the character, to not make her what I kind of call a capital S strong female character. So the idea that there are many female characters in all types of media that sort of don't really have a personality. They're kind of just badass, and they are really good at fighting, and they're kind of perfect. They don't really do anything wrong, and they're also completely joyless and humorless. So I don't think any of us really wanted Aloy to be that. And so the beautiful thing about Aloy is that she's so multifaceted, where she has the badass quality to her. She's very, very tough, very capable fighter, but she's also deeply compassionate, and she's curious, and she can be kind of sarcastic, and there's just a lot of things to play with her. And I think the narrative of Horizon lends itself so much to learning about Aloy and coming to care for her, because it's driven so much by her desire to know who she is and to feel like she has a place in the world, which I think is sort of a vulnerable journey and not something you get to often see. And so she just feels, I think, very human and real, which I think is also a hard thing to accomplish when you have, Aloy is a pretty determined character, but there's still some flexibility in terms of how the player wants to direct her. Is she more aggressive? Is she more kind or more analytical? And to have her have a very specific storyline while also having flexibility within that storyline to make the player feel like this is my Aloy, it's a hard balance to strike. So I think she's just such an interesting, complex character, and there's so much to play there.
What's your favourite game that's ever been made on the Unreal Engine? I mean, I said I wasn't going to pull any punches at the start, so...
Well, let's see. I think we have to go to game hours played. I've put in over 1,000 hours in Fortnite. Maybe 200 into Unreal Tournament. I've played a lot of games, but I've never gotten immersed into anything like this. So that's just my personal experience. Yeah. And I'm a terrible player. I have a KD ratio.
So am I, so it's fine.
My KD ratio is 0.3, but the magic of Fortnite is that everybody has a chance. Like, I've played over 1,000 games, over 2,000 games now, and I've actually won 6. And I completely suck. So
that's 6 more than me, Tim, to be fair. Yeah.
But it's neat, right? And that's kind of the magic of Battle Royale, right? It's the best player doesn't always win, right? And if you look at the movies in the genre, going back to the 1999 movie from Japan called Battle Royale, up to Hunger Games and everything else, it's all about the drama of, the come from behind and the opportunities everybody has and the mistakes they make. And that's I think that's part of the magic of the genre.
Seeing as that you've all worked on games that have really interesting choice involved, is there a favorite situation or choice in those games that you really either enjoyed writing or enjoyed playing? For example, I really like the opening sequence in Fahrenheit when you're in the bathroom. I had to pause the game in the Bloody Baron sequence, and I was really terrified of running through a fence in Bury Me in My Love. So I'd love to hear what you guys thought.
In Witcher 3, the choice that I found most difficult was whether to give Ciri over to Emperor Emir or not. I think that was one of those choices, and this is when I played it, not when I recorded it. That was one of those choices where I had to stop and really go, wow, well, what's going to be best for Ciri? And that's a really interesting choice to come up against in a game, that kind of power. I have kids, so any of you who have kids, whether they're yours or not, if you care about them, making decisions that directly affect someone you love, those are the hardest. Those are the most difficult. So that one I think stands out for me as a choice that had to be made that I had to really mull over.